In this lecture, I will try to give you a counterpart of these three circles. If you had time, to look at these three circles, which is an attempt to comprise the whole content of human mind and penetrate into it subjectively. There has been a long history of mankind trying to contribute exactly to this penetration into the mind. As I said before, beg your pardon? Louder? I don't speak loud enough. Yes. No, I have a microphone. No, I don't have a microphone. Yeah. I will try to speak louder. So in my first lecture, I have introduced the attempt how to get into the mind by the way of a shock. The shock came, to two people I introduced, Dostoevsky and Kaiserling, and something similar happened to me as well. And it was shortly after what happened to me when I wrote down practically the content of today's lecture. And so it came from within. What is happening in our mind when it is shaken? So it was shaken, and what happened was that all the books I have read before were shaken too. It was so easy to refer to a book when professor asked a question. The mind worked differently than after this very happening. All of a sudden, I was able to see that there is something interconnected in the mind. And these interconnections are not symbols. Symbols of our books, a collection of symbols, collection of books. I was able to penetrate into what is called idea, concept, idol, something what is before the symbol. It is easy to understand it if you speak one, two, or three languages. You immediately understand that the language we are using is a system of symbols which do not symbolize themselves. They symbolize something else, what is before the symbol. It is easy to understand if you speak two languages. And if you can switch from one to another one and continue the discussion in the other language, in the third language, fourth language. Here is the proof that our symbols we learn in school from books are secondary. I remember when I came to Alaska, and in my first lectures, I dared to challenge St. John. I didn't know that it was dangerous. When I said St. John was wrong. At the beginning was not the Word, and the Word was from God, and it was God. At the beginning of everything, of all mental activities, was an idea. I did not expect the reaction that I dared to challenge St. John. I thought I was talking, to people who were willing to think. I learned very fast from my students in North Pole that my lecture was the subject of the sermons in the church. And it was pointed out that it is very dangerous that university employs somebody, who dares to challenge St. John. So it was difficult to explain to people who did not desire any explanation. And within the families in North Pole, young generation, most of them were on my side. They were willing to come to class and listen to what I was saying. The parents were not happy with me and tried to put pressure on Dr. Wood, and they did not succeed. And I was a little bit more careful not to challenge in open, my public. I realized that the students were well indoctrinated at home and that it was for them a shock that somebody dares to challenge St. John. They did not understand the argument. They didn't want to understand the argument. So we go back. At the beginning, ideas, various people call it idols, something what are not symbols. We are born with them, and later they become expressed through our symbols or through many other systems of symbols. In order to communicate, we need the symbols. And here is the whole mystery between what's going on in the mind. And one of the most important things is that the mind exhibits itself through relationship of question and answer. This is what we were able to figure out in practically all cultures. It is question and answer. Question precedes the answer. Question triggers something in our mind, starts the fire which produces an answer. Then we embrace the answer, or we are critical as far as the answer is concerned. During the history of mankind, this was the starting point. The answers given were accepted, in general, uncritically. They were accepted because they came from a larger group of people. And those very, very important questions, when answered, were official answers. It must have taken a long time before something happened in our mind that we dare to question the answer. This was the beginning of development of critical mind. The mind itself becomes aware that it's asking questions, answers these questions, and the mind itself is critical of the answer given to the question. This is the beginning of deep insight which happened to people who were called philosophers. So they were critical about their own answer. It is very difficult, when you are in tension of answering a problem, and when the answer emerges, to be skeptical about the answer. Very few people can do it. So, question-answer is the basic mystery which moves our mind. Within this relationship develops the whole content of our mind. During the last about 3,000 years, the answers given about this critical assessment of our mind acquired names by those who were doing it. They tried to distinguish categories within which the answers were given about the answers. What emerged in due time was something called ontology. On is Greek word meaning to be or being. Logi, study of. On, O-N, to be, being. The question was, what is being? What is to be? And here various answers were given, and it was immediately observed that it belongs to the question, what is being? Human mind constructed immediately that next to being is probably nothing. So we move in ontology between nothing and being. So this is the central question. Now, what is this being? How is this being? Answers which were given here created new concepts. And these concepts were basically concept of quality, concept of quantity. Concept of quantity answered 1, 2, and more than 2 is many. You see, the mind operated in such a logical way that when the mind asks question, how many windows are here? So we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. And the 5 belongs into category of more than 1 and more than 2. Let's call this category many. 1, 2, many. But we can give names to it. Whenever we appeal to 1, we call it mono. When we appeal to 2, duo. Monism, dualism. More than 2, many. So 1, 2, many. These are categories of our mind. How we describe the world. In this room, there are many windows. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. This is many. How many clocks are here? 1. So you see, concept of quantity gave us numbering system which we superimpose on nature, calling everything from one to many. Before one, there is nothing. This concept of nothing was a very dangerous concept. You know, it was something similar like hell, something very bad, nothing. It was difficult to imagine that I could live for nothing or in nothing. You see how difficult it is to just think about nothing. My problem when I introduced a course about nothing 30 years ago, and university didn't know what I was going to do. They thought it was a spoof, no? That somebody can talk one lecture. Yes, let him talk about nothing. And as long as the students enjoy it, let him talk. But I taught for one semester. That was too much. Still, those who remember it, they are still in our administration. They were very young, you know. They think it was crazy. But I was able to get away with crazy things. So, ontology is a question about being. What is? So thinkers in all cultures and civilizations ask these questions and answer it in their way. And it can be classified into one, two, many. Now, next to quantity is quality. Quality asks question, what kind of stuff is it? If it exists of one stuff, what kind of stuff is it? Is it material stuff? Yes, materialism. When it is ideal stuff, idealism. When it is spiritual stuff, spiritualism. So all through the cultures and civilizations, people answer these very questions, which can be classified as idealism, materialism, spiritualism. You can ask question, what is the difference between Chinese idealism and Western idealism? So we have mode of classification that we can compare how different people answered according to same principle the question, believing in idealists. Modern era was proud of introducing materialism. Materialism was kind of underlying substance people believe in post-Renaissance period. You see, this materialism was identical with primary qualities, which can be quantified. Primary qualities quantified is the only way how we can talk about primary qualities, objective qualities. Many of you remember from your school how when IQ was introduced. Do you remember IQ? IQ was introduced as a quantity. It could not be anything else. If you seriously want to deal with it, it must be a quantity. We know that intelligence has nothing to do with quantity. This was a modern, materialistic, scientific dogma. we have organized a splendid society, Mensa, which was proud of collecting people with high IQ. They were just swimming in the waters of quantification. And those who were members of Mensa, they were of course proud, you know. I'm a member of I'm high IQ, how high? Don't ask me, too high for you to understand. So this was one of our modern intellectual religion. You know, the principle behind it is quantification. Unless you can quantify, it is not. This became the condition for doing science. Mathematics became the central discipline which supplies the tools for this kind of approach. Now you can come and ask questions, again question, what is mathematics? What kind of activity is mathematics? And if you ask a mathematician, he goes and he pulls out a book, you know, open it, this is it. I remember this was about 20 years ago, and we had a very good director of geophysics, and I was invited a few times a semester to deliver a lecture. And after I exposed my ideas, this director jumped on me and shouted, "Rudy, this is not so in physics. Don't you understand?" And I asked him the name. There is no physics. I remember the director of the institute started shaking, you know. There is no physics, he dares to say. There is no physics. All of us are physicists here, all of us believe it. You believe it, I don't contest your belief. But there is no physics as such. There is only way of thinking which is expressed under the name of mathematics, of physics, of chemistry, of philosophy. It is a way of thinking, religion. And if you grab a book, say, no, this is Newtonian physics, or this is Euclidean geometry, that's mathematics. You see how a book system of symbols helps you to get out of trouble? Here is it. So it was kind of shock, you know, that I dared to challenge the director of the institute, telling him that there is no physics, because he implied that who is saying that, you know, little philosopher, where are you coming from? I admitted there is no philosophy as well, so we can shake hands, but there were only few graduate students who understood the joke, but it was a serious joke. So as far as this concept of quantity and qualities are concerned, these are concepts of the minds which created categories of nothing, one, two, many. Within these, we have the whole system of thinking about quantity, about size of things. about weight of things. We express through number. Height of a man, intelligence. Then we have quality. This quality is what kind of stuff? Idealism, materialism, spiritualism. But human mind kept working on new categories through which it tried to express itself in relationship with the world. And next category is concept, view of the world. How are we viewing the world? And it was clear that there are people who are optimists. They see the world optimistically. They can drive you crazy when you are a pessimist. And vice versa. It is the way you see the world. Quality of the world. Optimism, pessimism. Another category. As far as world which is developing in front of us, how is it in principle developing? Mechanistically? This is a view that the whole universe is a mechanism which goes on, and we explain it mechanistically. The other, which is not mechanistic, is teleological, not theological. T-E-L-E-O-S is purpose. T-E-L-E-O-S. Teleological. You see, these are two explanations which is either or. Either we live in a mechanistic world or in a world which has an inner purpose towards which it develops. So there are hundreds of mechanistic theories of the mind, hundreds of teleological theories. So teleos, Greek word for purpose, T-E-L-E-O-S, teleos, teleological. Next important category is that we became aware that we have our will. And our will is an urge to act and to do something. The question was raised, what kind of free will do we have? The answer was deterministic. All of us are determined to act, like Pavlovian dogs. Determinism. When you are born, you are a mechanism which is turned on, and then you go on through life. And all of the elements of environment, of schooling, form you. It is a view of determinism. Various cultures have deterministic explanation. So all through the history of mankind, you find this deterministic belief of the mind. The other one is indeterministic, which believes in free will, indeterminism. You have free will. Of course, you are responsible with free will. It is up to you how you act. The question, what is really the case, can be answered only that you side with one side or the other. So ask yourself if you are determinist or indeterminist. Another form was fatalism. Romans were fatalists. Fatalists believed in fate, which is determinism. It is a stronger determinism. You know, everything is my fate. You know, yeah, I do it because this is my fate. You probably will understand that it was difficult for Romans to stop their deterioration when they believed that there is a course they are on which cannot be changed. Muslims are also fatalistic. There was a very interesting encounter of these views, philosophical views, during the building of Aswan Dam in Egypt. The dam was built under supervision of Soviets. Soviets sent the best engineers to build a dam through which they wanted to move into Africa. They started building the dam. After they erected a few walls and the water started running, the water carried away the walls. Soviet engineers were furious. What is happening? They went to Egyptian workers and they said, Allah Akbar. Allah won. The Soviets were coming from different view, different culture, which was free, planning, but deterministic too, but different, completely different view. They cannot change the minds of fatalistic people. So this was encounter of two concepts of the world. Determinism and indeterminism. Our next chapter will be emergence of concept of gods, of God. Concept that there is something out there which is responsible for this world, including myself. When we look into the history, mankind created theories of animism. Everything has anima, is animated. You see the projection, animated world, animism. This is the first form of religion. Probably the next one was fetishism. That we embrace some of the fetishes, made fetishes, which we cherished, prayed to them, believe that they will defend us, they will always be on our side. So this is the second form, fetishism, projected into nature by fetishistically thinking mind. The third step in the development of our idea of God was polytheism. There are many gods. They reside on the hills, on Olympus, and we have to give them gifts. We depend on them. Human imagination produced a very intricate systems of polytheism, putting gods around us and running the show. So this was polytheistic. Greeks had amazing mythology. Their gods were just like human beings, only they were immortal. They enjoyed life forever. They were drunkards, They were cheating on their wives, and they were exactly, replica of Greek mind. And in due time, this very polytheistic projection into the nature became superseded by something higher. There must be one God. Monotheism. Now human imagination created new systems of justification of one God running the show. So this is monotheism, and the monuments of monotheism is Judaism, Christianity, Muslim religion, and many other religions, with the exception of Oriental religion, which never developed similar concept of one. It was more or less pantheism. Pan, all. Pantheism. God is everywhere, and everything is God. This is a dangerous view for monotheists. Last time I mentioned Giordano Bruno, who was burned at the stake in 1600 because he was a pantheist. It is a dangerous religious conviction. Pantheism. Still, monotheists don't know what to do, really. Einstein was a pantheist. But a kind of pantheist who had God, who was walking as an individual, who doesn't play dice, and he was able to talk about him. He believed that there is some substance in this universe. If you want to call it God, fine. So it was, in my view, pantheistic concept of God. Yeah, let me mention that among monotheists, there was further development of monotheism, which is called theism, 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 which believes in God, creator of everything, in Roman Catholic concept, theistic God. All their great leaders were theists. In our post-Renaissance development, those who were theists became softer. And it was mostly in Great Britain, they exchanged it for deism. D-E-I-S-M, deism. Our founding fathers, almost all of them were deists. Deists. What is deism? God created the universe and then retired. And say, go ahead, push it yourself, you know. I have my rocking chair here. I will watch you, wish you the best. And you know, I'm simplifying. No, excuse me. But it is believed that everything was created by one God. And God retired. And he's sitting somewhere in a rocking chair and watching us in bleachers and say, hooray! You know. So this is deism. It's kind of more humanistic, you know, concept of God. You understand that even God has right to retire.
I can see why you had trouble with North Pole. but besides that, the point I wanted to make was in science, you often have a hypothesis and you have a theory, and sometimes the theory is found a little weak, and you add a little bit more to it, and you put a Band-Aid over here and whatnot, and then you have a change of paradigm.
Yes.
And the way you're portraying this development, as you call it, of religion, is kind of, you're going down the same path.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You know, in science, it is the working of the mind which became critical and which learn from the mistakes, but has a tendency to become, you know, also dogmatic. Yeah, it is human. And yeah. So let me complete that, this chapter on gods, from animism, fetishism, polytheism, monotheism, pantheism. There is panentheism. Not many of you have. Everything is in God. Panen, P-A-N, P-A-N-E-N-T-H-E-I-S-M, panentheism. It is a refined way, you know. Not many people, you understand. It is on the outskirts of belief in God. It's more or less philosophical, kind of fine expression of belief in God. Of course, the last one is atheism. A means none. Atheism, atheism, no God. So, gods and no God. Atheists had it always difficult in any society. And because those who believed in any form of God try to persecute atheists. It's still up to now, you know. Theists look down at atheists. They feel they have no chance, you know. They were limited by God to understand Him. In a way, when they are humanistic, they feel sorry for atheists. You know. Among other concepts of the mind, next to concept of God, is
What about agnostic?
Hmm?
What about
Agnostic. When we talk about knowledge, I will talk about agnostic. At first, soul. You know, mankind had discovered what I call mind, you know, and that there is a soul, and this soul is something embedded in us. Where is the soul coming from? Our great philosopher of Western culture, Plato, gave us explanation. Soul is coming from above. And when our soul was flying around the souls in the heaven, we have seen different souls. We have seen horse. We have seen a monkey. We have seen another man. And when we as a body get the soul from above, and when we come down to the earth, we recognize imitations of the souls. There is a primary world of ideas, of souls. This is idealism, of course. This world is secondary world, kind of inadequate replica of that world. It is a beautiful teaching. You know, when you are young, you believe in it. It cannot be otherwise. This is idealism of young people. Believe in ideas. Soul is thus actualistic, it is called in philosophy. It has an action which goes from between the worlds. The soul is something what makes man alive. The other view is that it is vitalistic. Soul is vitalistic, interconnected with everything else. Vita, life. It has life force and is part of the whole mechanistic construction. If we want to explain something, we explain it through interconnections. Mind is explained through interconnections, how everything hangs together. We have names given to this part, how they hang together. This is vitalistic explanation in biology of the soul. The soul is either actualistic or vitalistic. So all possibilities of explanation can be associated with one of these views. And as you see during the cross-section, those who are mechanistically minded, deterministically minded, have this kind of concept of the soul. The soul is spread out all through the brain, you know, and it is not separate. So all of these views are interconnected into one view, idealistic, materialistic. So far, our concepts, our mind has produced in the long history. Now we can look at any teaching, if it is Judaic teaching or Muslim teaching or Buddha, you know, and we can assess it. It belongs into this and these categories. These creators themselves didn't know that they were part of some larger framework. They expressed their view, which from our nomenclature, we can call them, they are just materialists. Democritus, famous inventor of atomism, Democritus, 6th century BC. There are only atoms in empty space. And these atoms will. Why? Why not? You see, mechanistic explanation. Until one day, the other, have you seen atom? No. What does it mean? A is none in Greek. Tom is to cut. To cut until I cannot cut anymore. Atom is uncut. Hooray! I have arrived at this internal substance which is uncut. Of course, they were evaluated as materialists, determinists. During the Christian era, their teaching was forbidden. Things have to change very radically before atomism will be seriously discussed. The whole society has to change. Nowadays, we have atomic theory. People don't think about what kind of puzzle there is. Or we have created in uncuts, we have cut uncuts. We still cut uncuts. We have institutes which have progressed in Geneva with the experiments, cutting uncuts and cutting uncuts. There is no end. You see our language, we are running out of our language. If somebody is listening to it, he says, this must be a mental asylum. They do not have any logic. They call uncuts, which can be cut, either or. Excluded middle, cut or uncut. Now, we come to the second great concept of the mind, knowledge. Again, we have a Greek word. Study of knowledge is episteme, P-I-S-T-E-M-O-L-O-G-Y, epistemology. Episteme is knowledge, study of knowledge. What is knowledge? How do we get knowledge? The early stages of knowledge were by revelation. Knowledge has to be revealed. Revelation. You remember the story of Moses. I don't want to repeat it. All of you know it. No. Poor man was in trouble. After he led children of Israel out of Egypt, his followers decided to remember how beautiful it was before they were in Egypt. They started remembering the old beliefs. Moses came to them and told them, look, we are escapees. We have to be united. They rebelled against the leader. What would you do? if you lead your children out of misery, and now your children rebel against you, he must be a desperate man. He decided to leave his children. And left and was thinking about his children's misery and his own. As a leader, he lost control. How to regain control for a leader? We know how he did. When he returned, he found his children in complete disarray. And he dared to tell them what he just learned from above. Can you imagine it? He came to them and told them, look guys, listen what I have figured out. Number one. Number two, had he selected this approach, they would have been sitting there under Mount Sinai still now. He would have been amended to death. He was a bright man, smart man. He did not use this approach. You know what he used. Number one, I received from outside. Number two, number three, four.
Everybody always believes the outside expert rather than you.
Yeah. No, you know, I was punished because they were, how do I know what actually happened? I don't. You know, I'm trying to make sense out of the whole thing. And so this is knowledge by revelation. You receive it from outside and then go to your neighbor and say, this is what is the case. This is what is the case. So it is belief in revelation. We have monuments, monotheistic monuments, which up to now govern great part of humanity. In the United States, there are over about 46% of people who believe the world was created 4,000 years ago and created according to Bible. How is it described? 21st century we have still. You see how tough the belief is.
Does that assume that if you get knowledge from revelation, then you have to have some kind of God figure
Yes,
to give you the revelation?
exactly.
And if you
And
don't
he
believe there's
reveals.
God,
He,
then you don't have any revelation.
yes, you have to believe that there is a God who reveals himself. You know, of course, how did Moses explain it? You know, he was very smart, in my view. You know, God was revealed as a burning bush. Burning bush was speaking. Take it or leave it. You know. Get a message. After you get a message, you have the message. Goodbye, I have the message. So this is knowledge by revelation. It moves through history of mankind. It's very powerful still. You know, great majority of mankind believes in that. What happened again? Men started thinking about this revelation and developed criticism. Skepticism. Skepticism leads with critical mind into a problem, what is really the case. And here, human mind suggested we have two agencies which we cannot deny. We have five senses. We have reason. Our knowledge has to come from either or. Reason. This was Plato. Plato gave us explanation of two worlds, dualistic world and rationalism. It is reason which governs everything in this world. It is concept of rationalism. You see, the entire continent, European continent, was under the spell of Plato's rationalism. They believed that human reason receives through senses knowledge about the external world, puts it together, and makes beautiful loaves out of it. Creative reason uses senses. Senses are helpers only. Passive helpers. Well-trained helpers.
Actually, can you mention about emotions, the role of emotions, for things like this, you know, like the flight from Egypt, that was a sort of an emotional invention.
Yeah.
So it plays with ideal world, it's an emotional.
You know, Plato is also the first one who talks about emotion. He gave us concept of man which has three parts. He is the first physiologist also. There are three parts of Plato's man. Reason, residing in your brain. Heart, courage, feelings in your heart, and stomach, which keeps the organism going. We are under leadership of the mind, of ratio, reason. Human society consists of three classes. You see, 1, 2, 3. Three classes. There are people who are born with big heads. They are the rulers. They are the rulers who will run the society. Philosophers, kings. They will run the society because they cannot help it. They have just big heads. Then there is second class in the society which have big hearts. These are soldiers. These are defenders of the Republic of Plato, run by philosophers, guarded by soldiers. The third class are proletarians. They have big stomachs. They like to eat, very little brains. You know, also not very much here, but human society needs them. And they can have wives and children. Those on the top, philosophers with big heads, they have wives and children in common. It is a communism of those who know, guarded by soldiers, and they also have communism. The proletarians, the largest group in the society, are those who do not know. You have to bribe them in order to stay in the society. You give them what they understand. So this is Plato's three-party system of human nature. Three classes of the society run by reason. This very system was adopted by Christian church. You see, they change here and there a little bit, you know, they have a pope on the top, they have cardinals and all those guardians of the church. And Platonism is here in long gown, you know, and walks for 1,000 years. This is Plato camouflaged as a medieval theologian. In modern era, of course, all Platonists will be idealists. How do we know? Through reason. This is what split our Western society into continental and Anglo-Saxon. British believe that we acquire everything by the way of senses. Continentals, guarded by the church, were rationalists. They believe that it is reason which runs the society. So there is a philosophical split between continent and British.